Hello, this is Genevieve Fontana coming to you from Canisius University in Buffalo, New York, and you are listening to the Did You Know podcast. You might not know it, but we have eco-heroines around our campus working to make it sustainable for future generations. For each show, I will spotlight earth-friendly initiatives and sit down with the change makers of our institution. Today we are spotlighting Cece Gotham, earth-friendly community member, chief of staff, and previous director of alumni engagement at Canisius University. Cece has a unique perspective of the institution as a previous student, earning both her bachelor's in marketing and her master's in communication and leadership. Thank you so much for being part of this project and speaking with me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So our first question is, please introduce yourself and explain a little bit about what you do at Canisius.
So I am Cece Gotham, as you said. So my current role as chief of staff, I've been in this position for about 2.5 months. It's a somewhat new position to the university. And when President Stout came in, it was really a priority for him to have someone who could help execute his vision and some of his projects and keep him on track.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of the role. And so that's a lot of what I do, keeping his schedule in line, making sure the initiatives that he wants to tackle, that the appropriate people are involved, and the projects are moving forward. So that's a lot of what I do. But previously, as you said, I was the alumni director, and that really gave me a good opportunity to reflect on my time at Canisius. It was a short stint as the alumni director, but Canisius impacted my life so much, and I want to continue to help the next generation have that same experience and also reconnect people.
That's really great.
University.
And I'm sure you have so many connections already being a student here and then knowing some previous alumni as well.
That's the beauty of having a smaller campus.
Yeah.
So many familiar faces. When I came back to the job here, when I came back, started working here last summer, it was so refreshing being somewhere where there were familiar faces, new ones, but also familiar faces.
Yeah, that's great. I know I feel a sense of community here because I'm a transfer student actually.
Okay.
And so just being here, I already felt so welcomed.
So. Good. I'm glad to hear that.
So you talked about it a little bit, but what does your role entail as the chief of staff at Canisius University?
Every day is different. There is no typical day, but a lot of it will be, we are right now working through the final stages of the new strategic plan.
Right.
And a huge part of that will be making sure that the goals and metrics that we are trying to achieve with the strategic plan are implemented and that they are achieved.
Right.
Or changed as they need to be. Things evolve with time and the needs of the world around us, and what our students need from us and our community needs from us need to be adhered to, and so that's a really important part of the job. But then also, as I said, it's definitely the job of a president. It takes a village, and so making sure everything is flowing. He is where he needs to be. He's prepared for where he needs to go. So I like to think that I do an okay job of doing
Sounds
that.
like you do a great job. So then, as an alum and now a staff member at Canisius, have you seen the institution's perspective on the environment change at all?
From the time that I was a student to now, absolutely. I just think the world has changed so much in that time.
Right,
I graduated 10 years ago, and just even seeing initiatives like this that you're taking on, I think it's been an important part of being a Jesuit university, is being very eco-friendly and eco-conscious. But I love how much that has grown. I love that our current Pope is a Jesuit and takes so much pride in this, and I think it has trickled down so much to all of the Jesuit institutions, and we take so much pride in that here. But I think that there are just little things that we have done so well here and have taken time, and Jen, her role, just pushing people to think a little bit more about, okay, how can I do this in more of an earth-friendly way? And every time I even see Jen, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to remember to bring my reusable coffee cup. And just little things like that I think it starts with you. It starts with little small things that you make on a personal level, and then that grows to a larger scale. So,
I love how you said that, because it's kind of contagious. I know she always has her bottle, and even before our meetings and everything like that, she's like, oh, I'm just going to grab coffee and everything. So that's great, and it's
accountability is good.
Yeah.
So I think there are just little things that we have taken on campus that are different from when I was a student, and those are very encouraging to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the common Jesuit values is care for our common home. How do you think that this is implemented in our institution, and more specifically our strategic plan, as you were talking about?
Yeah, so we're just working on finalizing the new strategic plan, and that is actually something that is particularly called out in our strategic plan. And sustainability, there are many different ways that it can be interpreted. Like I think of sustainability in terms of just the sustainability of the college as a whole. How are we continuing to meet the needs of our community and our society around us? And ecological sustainability is a part of that. And I think there are so many things that we can do with this, the way that we wrote it in with our strategic plan. We can be creative with it. It's not straight and narrow. It's not just, okay, you have to do this specific thing in order to meet this need or this goal or this metric. We wrote it in there in a way so that we can really adjust to the needs of the community, but also the fact that it is called out, it shows how important it is to us. So that's a really, really big part of the strategic plan. What was the first part of that question?
The first part of the question, care for our common home.
I was a student who, I went to Catholic schools all growing up, but never went to a Jesuit school.
Yeah.
And I think that is a natural part of your process when you're becoming an adult, that you question your faith a little bit, or you try to figure out who you are. And coming to Canisius and seeing the Jesuit values, I was like, this is the part of my faith that speaks to me.
Yeah.
The real human aspect of it, and I feel that this is such an important stewardship of our earth is such an important part of it, and if our faith doesn't touch that, then it didn't feel authentic to me.
Right.
And so I felt like that was something that it really spoke to me as a student, and I felt like, okay, I feel okay being a Catholic. I feel okay with this part of my faith and my identity, and I like to think that is one of the wonderful things about Canisius and our Jesuit schools is there's such this human side to it, that it's not just about your relationship with God. That is one aspect of it, but this is so much more too.
Yeah.
And it calls us all to be a little bit better of humans.
Sure, yeah.
And that's a really important part of it.
And I think that really ties into what you were talking about, like making the school great for future generations and everything that ties into sustainability, both sides of sustainability, and just the Jesuit values as a whole as well. So,
yes, absolutely.
And how has a Canisius education shaped you into the person you are today?
It's hard to find a part of my life that wasn't shaped by Canisius at this point. I feel like if I wouldn't have decided to come here, so much of my life would be different. I don't think I'd be sitting here with you today. So it's hard to imagine my life any differently if I hadn't come to Canisius. But when I think about sustainability and why it's become so important in my life is I took a class my sophomore year, and the book that was included for the class was The Ethics of What We Eat.
Oh, okay.
And the professor, he was so wonderful, but he really challenged a lot of our thinking, and I had never really thought much about what I eat. Like I thought about it in a health conscious way, but not in terms of the way that it affected the world around me.
Right, the
impact. And I just remember learning about, the mileage that your food travels before it sits on your plate. How many people have in some way, shape, or form impacted the plate that's sitting in front of you, and what are the small choices that you can make on a personal level to change that. And I actually ended up becoming a vegetarian after that class. And so I've been a vegetarian for about 12 years now. My college roommate was also she was a lifelong vegetarian. And I had never met a vegetarian. It's very common now. Right. When I was a student, it was not that common for people to be a vegetarian. And I was in awe that she had been raised that way her whole life, and I was so curious about it. And then I took this class, and I went back to her. I was like, I think I have to become a vegetarian. I think I need to do this. Can you please coach me through this,
Right.
like help me. And you don't realize, growing up and not knowing anything different, I didn't realize how much meat I was eating on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
And it was just not even a thought. And having to make those decisions, it made me be so much more conscious of what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, because food impacts our lives so much.
Oh my gosh,
It
yes.
impacts how you feel. It impacts the people you spend time with. It's and having to be conscious of that made me become more conscious of other things in my life. So in terms of thinking about that, but also just Canisius in general and how it has impacted my life. So I grew up in Rochester, and I grew up in the city there, and it was incredibly important to me that I attended a school that was within the city limits. I wanted to be on an urban campus. I wanted to be somewhere that I felt like the institution was part of a larger community.
Right.
And where we're physically located, I mean, you can't get any more in a neighborhood than we are, and that comes with a big responsibility. I think we could do better some days in terms of taking care of our neighborhood, and being a better partner and collaborator with our neighborhood, but it's an opportunity.
Yeah, it is.
While it's a challenge, it's an opportunity, and I felt like I got to get, when you're in college, it's very easy to stay in your bubble. It's very easy to just go from your dorm room to your classes to wherever you go with your friends on nights and weekends, go to basketball games, hockey games, whatever it is. And being on the Metro line, I didn't have a car as a student. I felt like I had the opportunity to actually get to know Buffalo a little bit better. And even just growing up an hour away, I knew about Buffalo, but I didn't know the city that well. And I'm so glad that I made that choice to be somewhere where I could really learn
and explore.
about. So it was, it was hugely impactful in my life. And I knew I stayed and I did my master's here. I got a graduate assistantship, and then I was working full time. And I left for a short stint.
And they wanted you back.
I knew that I wanted to come back one day. I knew that I needed to go get some skills somewhere else to be able to bring that back, because Canisius is such a special place, and I want to do the work to make sure that we are doing the best that we can for the next generation. My experience should not be unique. I mean, there should be aspects of it that are unique, but it should be passed on for the next people.
That's really great how dedicated you are to the institution.
Thank you.
So under our new leadership, do you think that our campus is more focused on sustainability?
I can't say more or less. I think it is a huge part of President Stout's initiatives.
Right.
But I think so much of it is about our Jesuit values. I think that regardless, it should be important. It doesn't matter who is in leadership, but I will say having such a close relationship with him, it is critically important for him, and he makes those daily choices to be more eco-friendly and more conscious of what he does. But I think regardless, I think it has been important to the institution. It's just growing, and it should continue to grow and evolve.
Right.
I love that it is called out in our strategic plan, and I think he takes a mentality that it starts with me, and that trickles down so much. He never prints anything. He doesn't print.
Wow, that's great.
If you bring a printed piece of paper to him, he gets a little bit mortified, and it makes me think on a day-to-day basis. Because I was previously working for other people who that was their way of communicating, and it's just those little things that make a big difference. And he and I have talked about ways that, can we make our campus so we're printing less, posters? Right. Can we have those delivered in a way that's done more sustainably? Digital billboards or things like that that might be done in a more eco-friendly way, and it's admirable for me to see that that's something that he cares about, and it forces me. I already care about it, but it forces me to care about it just even a little bit more.
Yeah.
And but I still think that regardless, we should all still do our part regardless of what the leadership is.
Right.
So,
I would agree. And I also think he's just very supportive of everything that's going on campus.
Absolutely.
And willing to learn.
Yes.
So,
and that's such an important part. I think being able to understand, I don't know everything.
Right, yeah.
You might know more than me about this, and that's a good thing. None of us can be masters of everything, and he's willing to ask those questions and kind of push the envelope a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's very helpful.
And I like how you said before, like getting the right people in the room, like using our community and all their expertise to make the right decision.
Yes, yep, that's an important part in every process.
Yes. So what are some ways in which you make earth-friendly choices in your life? You talked about being a vegetarian.
One thing that I started recently, so I will say that my guilty pleasure, or one of my favorite things, I love clothes, I love fashion.
Oh yes. I love your outfit.
This is one of my more simple outfits. But I think I didn't realize how the way that those choices that I was making and the clothing I was purchasing was not sustainable, and I have tried to pretty much every article of clothing I have at this point now is either part of my capsule wardrobe, it is rented,
nice,
or it is thrifted.
Oh, awesome.
So I try to. Those are the three. If it's not in my staple capsule wardrobe, if it doesn't belong there, it has to either be thrifted or rented.
Awesome.
And I love I do Rent the Runway.
Okay. I was going to ask you what you
and I guess I didn't realize before that one of my friends actually suggested it to me, and I was like, this is perfect, because you feel so guilty when you buy something and you only wear it twice.
Right.
And I'm like, now I can return this, and Rent the Runway has done a great job of becoming more sustainable. They tell you in each of your deliveries that please return all the hangers, please return all the plastic bags, and they use a reusable bag to ship your clothing back and forth.
That's great.
And I love it. And it's got me to try some different styles that I didn't think that I would try, but I don't feel that guilt about it because I can return it and I can share that with the next person, or I can hang on to it if I decide to.
Right. Oh yeah, I was going to ask if you can purchase the things that you like.
You can either hold on to it for another shipment and not return it, or you can buy it at the end if you want. I've never bought anything yet, but I recommend it. I think about things like weddings or events for work,
right, where you only wear a dress one time, or something like
and
that.
Trying to be better about that, but but yeah, I love that. And I've had one of my best friends, she used to be the manager at a thrift store.
Oh, really?
And
cool.
so it really got me comfortable with how to shop in a thrift store, because it can be overwhelming if you don't know what you're looking for. And she's really been helpful in that sense to me.
And you can always find some gems in the thrift store.
Yes, but I also think in terms of my personal life, like composting, trying to use energy efficient appliances in the house. I think it's little things. Like I live in a city home and have the old windows, and you put the plastic on them in the winter, and that's not the most eco-friendly choice. And I realized there are alternatives that are recyclable, and sometimes you might have to go like a little extra length and do something that you aren't comfortable with. But if you start to make the conscious decision that I want to be more eco-friendly in my life, there are avenues out there, and I love that if you just push yourself a little bit.
Right. So, and are you able to compost on campus like you were?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
Do we have that?
Well, we have
my other house.
Oh, yeah. I just want to be sure.
Yes.
So we have like a small one in the East-West Community Garden, but I would really love to see, it's like one of those like grinding ones you know what I'm talking about. But I would love to see it be available to students, especially those who have like a kitchen and stuff like that.
Right, something available across campus. That's a good idea. We should explore that.
Yeah, we should.
Because I think there are so many, I think people, one of the things that I love here is have updated, what's recyclable and what's not. Because I think we take that for granted and it changes.
Right.
That has changed over time, some of the things that are recyclable and where to dispose of them. And people feel like, oh, I should already know this. And so then they don't ask the questions.
Right.
And if we did a little bit more of those call outs and helped educate people, it would make them feel a little less guilty. So I think that's a good idea.
That's so important. Well, I was reading something about wishful recycling. People just put stuff in their recycling bin and just hope something happens with it. But I mean, that honestly contaminates it, which is so sad, and people don't realize that. So they might be doing more harm than
and don't want that. But I think it's our duty to educate people in those situations. So.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see that composting. Maybe we can work on that.
Yeah, I think that's a nice next project.
And so we all know that becoming a sustainable individual is a process. What are some things that you hope to implement in your life?
Hope to implement in my life.